So I believe that it's something that the local government should really look into at this time, especially since the community members have raised their voice once again. As we also go um into the year, it becomes more and more critical for them to be able to solve this water problem, or else we've seen, influx of people out of the area, increased health crisis, and all of that affecting people.
I see a certain part of the story where one of the members of the community speaks about how they have to send their children downhill to get water. You see the uphill, that's when they say it is an uphill. I guess this is why such phrases will come across. It's an uphill task to get some things done. But in societies we've seen around the world, let's look at the Middle East, Israel, for example, with the kind of topography they've got. Water has been, you can move water up to that level. So this doesn't seem like rocket science.
I don't believe the challenge is inability to move water up. I think the challenge is just a lack of intention, and the fact that the relevant government, local government, which is direct to the people, has just not taken this seriously.
So in essence, one would think about how to get food. By the time you get food, you think about where would you get water?
And they all connect.
And God helping you, you don't choke on the pepper if you like pepper a lot. Mr. C, you're going to add to that.
So I'm going to say this. This is extremely shameful and disgraceful. So 10 years speaks to two consecutive elections. Now, for that area, there is a House of Assembly member. For that same area, there is a House of Representative member. For that same area, there is a senator. So we have three different individuals doing absolutely nothing. And you then have the local governments. So and then you have the state government. So it just speaks to a complete and abysmal failure on the part of state actors to do the most basic thing in that community. Now, I would like to know what the cholera rate in that community is, given the fact that are they prone to all sorts of diseases like dysentery, cholera, typhoid? It would really be nice to know. And then it also speaks to the non-action of the Ministry of Health. So it's just a whole load of inaction, failure of governance at every level. And then I also blame the people. I'm sorry. If the first set of people fail you, on what basis are they returning? On what basis do the new guys come in and remain yet unaccountable?
Or really, should water in this age and time be a carrot for electoral vote for ballots right now?
It shouldn't, but sadly, this is our reality. So even the most basic things, you have to ensure you get them. And if they're not delivered, what is the basis for all these elected individuals to remain in office?
Mr. C, you're still going to dwell on these elected officials because they are at it again, once again, with their actions in the hallowed chamber, as we can see. But let's race down, get a copy of the Premium Times, where it's stating here that Nigerian lawmakers reject bill requiring president to secure over 50% in presidential election. And this might also cascade down to states in terms of when there are more than two candidates vying for the office of the land.
Yes. Okay. So thank you, Mas. So let's start with what the current provision is. The current provision, as per the provisions of the 1999 Constitution, as follows: to be declared the winner of a presidential election, we need to get at least a quarter of the votes cast in at least 2/3 of the population. What does that mean? Breaking it down to a 4-year-old or 5-year-old, you need to get at least 25% in 4 states. It's as simple as that. I'm not going to go into legal argument of whether the FCT is a state or not. Just get 24 states. Now, a House of Rep member that raised the bill, proposed a bill saying that rather than do that, to ensure, and this is where he's coming from, that it's important that whoever wins future elections is actually popular. And then you really have a mandate of people get at least, you have to get 50% of the votes, then +1. Now, for very obvious reasons, the members of the House of Representatives shut it down, and they want to stick with this current format. Now, we must recall that the current president got about, according to INEC and his figures, and I'm relying on the figures, got about 37% of the votes that were presumably cast. What that means is that at least 2/3 of Nigerians didn't vote for it. At least the ones who voted at the election, according to the same figures. So it's no surprise that this bill was proposed. Now, is it a good idea? Now, let's look at it. Where you have a president or governor who's gotten 50% plus one, what does that indicate? The people are solidly behind the person and are willing to initially give him all the room to operate and to deliver. Now, contrast that with a position where someone gets in with less than 40%.
But that's first past the post, simple majority.
Yeah, no, according to President Long, yes. But now, when tough decisions need to be taken, tough times need to be ridden out. The man who has 50%, right? The people are more likely to resonate with him. If he says we need to do this, they're more willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. They're like, okay, we put our faith in you. So far, you haven't disappointed. Let's go through this process with you. Well, the man who gets
or woman, because someday there might be a woman.
Yeah. Okay, so the individual, the individual who gets less than 40%, right? Then we have to go through top 10. Remember that maybe 60% were not in favor. They would always question, okay, why are we doing this now? Are you sure this is the best time to do it? Are you sure this is the best way to go about it? So basically, you need the support of the people. And when you look at other democracies, when a government feels that it no longer has the support of the people, the government offers to resign, and you find that in parliamentary system. Now in the US, I'm not sure it's the first past the post. I think you have to get at least 50%, but I stand to be corrected. But
then they have the electoral college too at some point to resolve.
Definitely. But here, maybe we need to revisit this bill. Do not throw away the baby with the bathwater, even if the bathwater is dirty. Preserve the baby and then bring fresh water. That is key.
All right, it's still freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1 FM. We expect to get your messages across now. When would they come on to 0809 444 0981? Once again, 0809 444 0981. We'd also would love to read the messages you leave on our YouTube channel, youtube.com /Smooth 981 FM Lagos.
Sorry? No. Who's that? Where did that one come from?
This is just signing.
It is still freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1 FM. Mr. Steele's still here. Gbubemi still also here, helping us get the papers, and we've got you there. So let's go over to pick up a few messages and then get back to the papers now. Let's see what Deji's message is all about this morning. Let your Rosayan report, aka Occam's razor, extend to bandits, kidnappers, armed robbers, and it goes on. Razor fall. There should be sensitization of the society. News TV goes on and on about penalties for these crimes. Now, Ajayi Onolinuwa's message from Magodo GRA Sherry comes up, says, it's highly commendable that the military is taking the fight against terrorists to their enclaves, but as it has been observed, it will be much effective if critical intelligence is deployed for the fight. Now comes a message from Tunde. Tunde's message is saying, what if the 50% come from a region that can command that number in a nation with wide diversity, i.e. like ours, which I believe is the reason to secure at least 25% in 2/3 of the state. Mr. C, you would respond to this rejoinder. I go over to Abbas Oladepo's message. It says, being popular among people doesn't make one a good leader. The last election brought out so many reasons why we don't even need a 50% popular vote. Should we start talking about how people and even analysts try to so hard to demarket a particular candidate and also praise a particular candidate to high heavens, making him look like the best thing to have happened to us? One may not be popular among the people, but will perform very well. Just training that one. But you were going to respond to something that was
So
said in the words.
I'm going to respond to two things, but I'm going to start with the last thing. I think it's highly responsible for a listener to come in. I did not name any particular individual. It's not my problem if I do not like your candidate. Now, you speak about the current president. He's been in office for 9 months. Can you type out what you believe he has achieved?
And Tunde also has
Now,
a message for you.
Then I'm going to address the person who said, okay, as it stands now, no part of the country can generate 50% of the votes in any election. So I think we should, it doesn't matter where you're from. This business about 24 states, 26 states, once you get 50% of the votes, that means 50% of the population, wherever they live, are in support of you. And if that's the case, by all means, carry on. What did Tunde say?
Okay, Tunde was asking you if the 50% will come from a particular region, and that's what you've just spoken to right now. So let's go over to Gbubemi. The Punch newspaper speaks about ECOWAS once again, that's the Economic Community of West African States, lamenting how low trade volume among member states. And how can people trade when some are pulling out and they hardly even can even visit themselves in the first place?
Okay, so the dream of the founders of ECOWAS, was to establish an economic community amongst all of the West African states. Technically, because we're all linked together, the mindset was that we can all trade together, exist together, do business together. And that's why we have such things as a 90-day free access into each other's countries. So we don't need visas, we can just go in. However, that dream does not seem to have achieved as much as the founders would have desired, largely because according to the director of the ECOWAS Commission, intra-community trade stands at about 12%. I contrast that with intra-community trade of, blocks like Europe, for example, which is about 60%. So it really looks like we're not doing as much business with ourselves as we could. But one of the things that occurred to me is there's a likelihood that this may be formal figures and there may be a lot more informal trade going on that has not been captured. I can't speak to that, but I potentially see that possibility. However, speaking to what has been said as well, when we consider the fact that the ECOWAS region is would it be right to say a fairly volatile region, because at almost every point in time, there's at least one country in the bloc that is having some sort of political upheaval. So if you look at it now, Mali, Niger, and what's that third country? Burkina Faso, have had military coups in the last 2-3 years, which have affected them. And looking at it now, those three countries have actually now pulled out of the ECOWAS, so which has affected the structure of ECOWAS. I'm not quite sure what ECOWAS' final response to that will be, because I don't think we have seen that yet. But these are part of the considerations. So I can only believe that one of the reasons, or the major reasons why they pulled out, is because they believe that the ECOWAS does not serve their best interest, and they are probably looking to form their own economic bloc or align with someone else or something else,
But again, in respect to why they don't trade, I'm happy you brought up the issue. There might be a lot of informal trading going on, not captured in official figures. But let's even look at the kind of commodities within the sub-region. It's just basic, no value added to commodities. So why would we, and we produce similar things? So why are we surprised?
That's part of what I was also going to say. So a lot of our trade also within ECOWAS, within Africa, actually, or sub-Saharan Africa, is also with the West, because we tend to trade in raw goods and the West tends to process these goods, sell them back to us. Ideally, what would have helped us is if we had some sort of partnership amongst ourselves where we had the processing and the finishing capabilities within our region. So we can also sell within ourselves, and also process within ourselves have the final goods that we can sell within ourselves and also export out of the region. So things like, for example, cocoa, there's cocoa in Nigeria, there's cocoa in Ghana, that partnerships that could have been, agreed upon to process these goods into several finished goods, or we can produce even goods like chocolates, for example, in significant quantities that we can sell within ourselves and then also sell outside of the region. So these are just some of the issues. I believe that, over and above, there needs to be a greater level of integration within the government. So things like the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement exist, but I don't believe we've started even seeing the impact in terms of implementation within the African region. Anyway, not all of the African countries are even subscribed to it anyway. But there needs to be a lot more action rather than talk in terms of things like this, because ideally, I believe, well, partly maybe because some of the ECOWAS countries are also, would it be right to use the word subservient to France in their French Francophone agreements and whatever. So that may also be a challenge, Over and above, I think that the ECOWAS countries need to look a bit more inward and look for ways to actually practicalize a lot of the policies, because all of these policies, many policies exist to support these things that we're talking about, trade and all of that. But to what extent, have they been implemented?
All right, it's still freshly pressed and smooth 98.1 FM. We expect to read messages, the final tranche of messages coming across. If they get in before the end of the show, on to 0809 444 0981. Let's go to Mr. C. The Daily Trust newspaper, JACBA, nurses, midwives asking the federal government to create separate salary structure. One wonders, the one existing, has it been fulfilled?
Okay, thank you, Matt. So yes, it is true that the current salary structure that exists has not been properly or faithfully implemented. However, that is not just the full story. The reality on ground is this. We have lost over 15,000 nurses in the last 9 to 12 months. They've emigrated out of the country. Now, these over 15,000 nurses, combine the years of experience, we've lost quite a fortune in terms of experience alone. Now, the Association of Nurses is then proposing a measure that will ensure that the nurses stay within the country, and that is an enhanced salary structure. So on the face of it, it's a good call, it's a good plan, because we have to retain the few good hands we have left, and then still encourage people who are in the nursing schools, nursing colleges currently to continue, and also to inspire people to want to take up the profession. However, this is the big question, and this is where you were going to with your initial question. Where is the funding going to come from? Now, Nigeria is the paradox. In one breath, we appear not to have money. In another breath, we're regaled with consistent tales of public officials who have looted the treasury. So the question then is, if there's no money, what are they looting? So the truth of the matter is, health is a sector we cannot afford to play with or toy with. And somehow, both governments at the national and sub-national levels, and I dare say even the local government levels, will have to find the discipline and the political will to make this happen.
All right, that seems like we're going to go over to our last paper for the morning, and Gbubemi would help us sum that up in about a minute, because it says here from the Nation newspaper, Nigeria's economic transformation requires government citizens collaboration, more like two hands coming together to clap, else one can clap.
So the wife of the president, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, was at Owerri, Imo State, to flag off the Renewed Hope Initiative's Women Agricultural Support Program. At that program, they identified, I think, about 100 persons, who were given small business recapitalization loans of about 100,000 naira each. So these are people with disabilities. They also identified, I think, about 500 women who were given 500,000 naira each, together with inputs to these are agriculture, women in agriculture. So they're given 500,000 naira each, together with inputs into their areas of specialization. So whether they were crop farmers or fish farmers or whatever, you know, together with the commitments from the Nigerian Agricultural, sorry, let me just get that, Nigerian Agricultural Land Development Authority to offtake their produce after that. So this is a good way of empowering people.
Yeah, but then I'd like us to just quickly sum up with this quotation where it says in the story where it says, the captain of this nation plane will soon turn off the seatbelt sign and we will have a smooth flight.
So
it's on that
so
note.
the
Wrap up.
so very quickly, 30 seconds. The challenge I have with statements like that, they're so empty, so backwards. They don't mean anything. We'll soon. How soon? This is the what? We're entering the 10th month. What is how soon is soon?
Mr. C, messages waiting from Ekbe right now for us. Fabian from Ekbe goes up to say, as a medical personnel, I would like to say that no matter the salary, nurses and doctors will still jackba, says leave. The salary can never be compared to those in foreign countries. An enabling environment is overhauling of the hospital infrastructure is what we ask for. Patriotic doctors like Fabian still here from Ekbe. I've got Tunde's message saying, it appears that everyone, professions included, in this nation is just looking for how to get a larger share of the pie rather than work together to make the pie bigger. That's from Tunde. Then final message, Cisco giving us this one. Giving cash to farmers will not solve the problem, rather equip them with tools needed. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. I say thank you so much to Mr. C.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Gbubemi Atimomo, for your time also.
Thank you very much.
And I say thank you to everyone who sent in message. Olumide, I see Deji, I see Abbas Oladepo. Abbas, Kulu at this point. At some point, you and Mr. C would have to give us a hug and handshake this morning. I see your message there, but hey, it's about the papers and opinions. That's where we leave it here. Stay tuned. At about 15 minutes past the hour, it'll be time for us to get into the Grapevine Everything Entertainment. I could use all of this company when the time comes.